Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Wolfenstein Youngblood. My name is Camel, and today I'll be showing you all of the Easter eggs and notable secrets that can be found within the game. Timestamps for each secret and Easter egg in this video can be found down in the description and in the comments. Now, down there in the old description, you can also find all of my social media links. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and be sure to join our brand new Discord server. Also, be sure to check out my other Easter egg videos via the playlist link down below. You'll really enjoy them. There are a ton of delicious Easter eggs tucked away in Wolfenstein Youngblood. And speaking of delicious, today's sponsor, as this video is brought to you by Nvidia and Inno3D RTX GPUs. Stick around for more on RTX and how it works in Wolfenstein Youngblood to deliver us these crispy and immersive graphics, which you'll be seeing all throughout this video, which has been powered by Inno3D's new RTX 2060 Super Twin X2 OC RGB GPU, which was sent to me and is in my computer right now and produced all of the beautiful graphics that you're seeing throughout this video, but more on that later. And before we get started, it is important to note that Youngblood was made by Machine Games, which is a Swedish studio, with the help of Arkane's Lyon studio, so they're French, and the game is set in France, and everything is in German. Now, I don't speak Swedish, French, or German, so I do apologize if I butcher any of the pronunciations throughout the video. With that said, let's get into the Easter eggs of Wolfenstein Youngblood. On the airship on the first level, we can find an arcade zone in the casino, where, along with the most cinematic Blade Runner-esque lighting I've ever seen in a video game, is it just me or is it suddenly getting moist in here? Anyway, along with that delicious lighting, there is also a number of arcade games that have been based off of real-life equivalents, especially retro games and franchises. Firstly, there is the Super Schlag, or Super Blow, which appears to be based on Nintendo's 1983 arcade game called Punch-Out!, or given that it has Super in the name, it could be a reference to Punch-Out's sequel in 1984, which was called Super Punch-Out!, which, if you didn't guess, is a boxing game. Punching, that is, not packing up items. Next we have this one, which translates to Frog Splash, which is clearly a reference to Frogger, which was first released as an arcade game in 1981, developed by Konami and published by Sega. And as we can see here, this little frog even has to hop across a road just like in the original. Thirdly, we have this guy, which translates to Defense Against Missiles. Now, this game is a nod to Missile Command, an Atari game first released in 1980 as an arcade game, in which you defend various cities from missile attacks. Fourthly, we have Ziegelturm, I think, which means brick tower. This is clearly a homage to the classic game of Tetris, which was first released in 1984 in the USSR, as it was created by a Russian software engineer. And finally, we have Wurm, which means sausage worm. Now, this game is likely a nod to the 1987 arcade game called Blockade, which was the precursor to the game Snake, which I'm sure we all know. It may also be a reference to the game Centipede. Either are entirely possible, unlike getting a high score in Snake. Now, on a few of the levels throughout the game, we can find these huge billboards, which are Opera's advertisements on the sides of buildings and things like that. Now, it's all in French, but in English it says, "The amazing Circus Arkane. Filled with wonders and strange talents, the Arkane troupe will offer you extraordinary performances." This is without a doubt a nod to Machine Games' sister studio, Arkane Studios, who, as we know, actually helped develop Wolfenstein Youngblood. Now, Arkane also has a French studio in Lyon, who again are the specific part of Arkane that helped develop this very game. So I have no doubt in my mind that this is a nod to the talented lads at Arkane. Nice people too, at least Sebastian was, he's the only one I've met. And just for the anecdote, I said, how do you come up with all these cool ideas in like Dishonored and stuff? And he said, I hire people better than me. Now, inside the catacombs we can find a retro gaming console that has clearly been modelled off of the real-life Atari 2600, specifically the wood grain finish variant, sometimes referred to as the Woody. You'll also notice that the buttons on the controller say L, G, D, F. This is because the game is set in Paris, and the words for forward, right, left, and backwards in French respectively start with the letters L, G, D, and F. And interestingly, along with the console, we can also find some game cartridges, which once again have very clearly been modelled off of the Nintendo Entertainment System game cartridges. Sadly, these ones here in game don't have any labels, so we can only imagine what games are contained on them. Let's be honest, it's probably Skyrim. I'm sure Todd has travelled through time and parallel dimensions just to spread Skyrim some more. Now, throughout the Wolfenstein franchise, at least in recent years, there is a company called Axto. And now it seems to be based off tech and media companies from the 80s like Akai, TDK, and Sony. The brand Akai seems to have influenced this Axto brand the most, as both names are similar and share similar triangular logos. Also, all of the poster advertisements found throughout the game for Axto products have clearly been based and almost completely mirror those of leading tech brands from the 80s. Now, rather interestingly, the name of this tech and media company Axto, which have been seen in a number of previous releases, is in fact an amalgamation of two names, Axel and Tor. This is in reference to two of the developers who have worked on the new wave of Wolfenstein games, the New Order, Old Blood, New Colossus, and Youngblood, and they would be Axel Torvinius and Tor Frick, two co-art directors, although now Tor has left the company while Axel remains. Regardless, this Axto company has been around for a few games, and it's an awesome little nod to those two dudes. Now, throughout various stages of the game, we can find bar globes. They are the globes that when opened reveal a small stock of alcoholic delights. Anyway, the ones in Youngblood have a famous piece of art on the inside, that being the birth of Venus, which were painted by Sandro Botticelli. Don't speak Italian either, sorry. But the painting looks like this, and I'll have to blur it because Venus is providing some not safe for work content, and if it's not safe for work, it's definitely not safe for YouTube. In the game, we can find these giant bottles, and on them they say Big Joe's. Now this, with the confirmation of a dev, is actually a nod to Joe Mueller, one of the developers on Youngblood, who apparently has now moved on from Machine Games and works for BGS. So it looks like Big Joe made a Big Joe to a different studio. Inside the sewers of the detention area, besides finding a quite literal, shining and impressive example of RTX's graphical reflective surface capabilities, up some stairs on a wall next to a payphone there is some text that says "Call me." Then it has the phone number 07244888037. Now I looked this number up, and it is a real number for student housing in South Africa, and as far as I can tell, there is no connection to that place or Wolfenstein or its devs. I feel like it might be that one of the developers went to a university down there and stayed there, or one of the devs just made this number up, and it just so happened to be a real number. Personally, I would have checked that first before putting the phone number for student housing on the wall in a game. Either way, it's pretty weird, and I would suggest not calling this number unless you are actually looking for student housing next to that specific university in South Africa. Now there is a newspaper article that we can find, specifically number 18, Trend Spotting the Hair Bear Craze. Everyone's favorite new German toy recently sold out at all licensed shops in New Paris. The brand, which features 10 different bears, each with their own color scheme and with a special insignia on its forehead, which represents one of the Führer's 10 desirable traits, which all children of the Reich learn in school, was launched earlier this year in Berlin. The stuffed bears were an overnight success, and people lined up outside the stores to get their hands on the delightful toys. The most popular hair bears are the red swastika bear, who fights for the purity of the Aryan Herrenwolf, and the black eagle bear, who's all about duty and service to the fatherland. There are plans for a Hair Bear cartoon TV show with pre-production already set for this autumn. Now, if you didn't pick up on it, these hair bears are a clear allusion to the real-life toy Care Bears, who come in all different colours and bear unique insignias or symbols on their stomachs, championing different traits and attributes. They also had their own TV show and a few movies. Luckily, they never released any with swastikas on its head. Funnily, Herr in German means army, so they ain't Care Bears, they are literally army bears. And I bet they bear arms. Now, throughout a few of the levels, we can find a selection of magazines scattered on random tables and things like that, one of which is called Sewing for Kids. This is likely a nod to episode 10 of season 8 of Curb Your Enthusiasm, in which a kid, Greg, sees Larry draw a swastika. Not knowing the cultural significance of this symbol, Greg, the child, then sews a cushion for Susie, a Jewish woman, and branded on the front is a big swastika as Greg thought it looked cool. Which makes me think that this sewing magazine, specifically for kids in a Nazi-ruled world, is in reference to those events in that Curb episode. Now, on the upper floor of the catacombs, just behind this woman tinkering with some robots, there is a blueprint for a little something called Cyberpilot. This is of course in reference to a side VR entry to the Wolfenstein franchise called, you guessed it, Cyberpilot. Now this was released at the same time as Wolfenstein Youngblood. Now I played it at 2019's E3, very hungover and nearly passed out. Sickeningly hungover, unfed, unwatered, no sleep, and intense warfare VR don't mix that well. God, I miss E3 and memorable experiences like that. I'm not joking, I actually do miss that a lot. Now along with this, we can find a readable called Rolf's Diary. This reads, I'm getting concerned about the new Cyberpilot program. There are several security holes in its programming that make it susceptible to malicious hacking from outside sources. I must raise this with my superior tomorrow. Now this first part about Cyberpilot being hackable is of course a direct reference to the VR game Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, in which the Cyberpilot Ubersoldat android is hacked and used by the French resistance to fight the Nazis. On the mission Victory Boulevard, after we snap out of our daze after being hypnotized by the stunning RTX lighting and atmosphere, we can find a garage section tucked away to the side. In the hallway, in the entrance, we can find a billboard that has a list of names on it. All of these names are of machine game developers. M. Lambert is Miles Lambert, the lead environment artist. K. Hagström is Karin Hagström, listed under additional contributions. F. Stertman is Fredrik Stertman, listed under additional contributions as well. A. Sanchez is a name that I'm not going to be able to say. Ayer Sanchez Diepa? Anyway, this A. Sanchez is one of the senior environment artists. K. Kindh is Kristoffer Kindh, who is one of the senior level designers. Sadly, the next one is unreadable and ends with SSON, Son, which like 30 of their staff's last names end with SSON, so there's no telling who actually this is. The next one, J. Mueller, is Joseph Mueller, who is listed under additional contributions. S. Tonring is Stellan Tonring, one of the senior 3D artists. M. Develtere is Matthias Develtere, another one of the senior 3D artists. T. Lidström is Tomas Lidström, listed under additional contributions, and P. Willbo is either Patrik Willbo, one of the senior gameplay engineers, or Pierre Willbo, the lead quality assurance tester. All in all, I know it's a bit listy, but it's a really cool and well hidden nod to a bunch of the developers. All throughout the game we can find random bits and bobs, random bits of junk, random food items, but there's one in particular that we're going to take a closer look at, as inside a vending machine we can find a can of cola. This is called Didrik's Cola, just cola. Now this name Didrik is in reference to Didrik Breitholtz, one of Machine Games developers, who is a level designer for Wolfenstein Youngblood. Not only did he design levels, he produced Just Cola, which is much better than in Just Cola. Ah yes, now this one's pretty cool. Inside a hidden room on the mission Victory Boulevard, we can find a door that must be blown down. In here it's quite dark, but as we enter the lights will come on. Here we can find an outsider's shrine, atop which is a rune from the Dishonored franchise. This one here is identical to the runes that can be found in Dishonored 2. Thank you to my friend Ellie the Geek who went into Dishonored 2 and got a screenshot of the rune for me to use in this video, which is the one you're seeing right now. Check out her channel for all things Arkane based, because she loves Arkane. Anyway, of course, the Dishonored franchise is produced by Arkane Studios Lyon, who, as we know, helped produce Wolfenstein Youngblood, so it's only natural to have something so unnatural such as a rune here in Youngblood. Now there is a readable note that we can find that is a publisher's rejection letter, which appears to be a rather aggressive reference to President Donald Trump and the seemingly unbelievable nature of his presidency. It reads, "Thank you for your query and your interest in Aryan House Publishing. We've chosen not to move forward with your novel The Great Wall. Although the idea of a huge wall made of concrete protecting the borders of the Reich is an interesting concept, the novel's story is simply not plausible. Besides the grammatical errors that litter your text, there are too many plot holes and inconsistencies in your writing, both in narrative and in the main character's backstory. No reader would buy that a simple con man would be elected the leader of the Reich, even if you factor in suspension of disbelief. We had a hard time believing that a protagonist who seems so unintelligent and incompetent would be able to accomplish anything other than clean the toilets of our facilities. Please do not waste our time sending in any further manuscripts." Now this very clearly, at least I think it's pretty clear, makes references to and takes several jabs at Donald Trump and aspects of his characteristics. And all this talking's got me thirsty. I need a cup of coffee. Now all throughout the game there's tons of graffiti. We're going to touch on a few of them throughout this video, but for now we can find one that is of particular interest. It says Dopefish Lives. This is of course in reference to Dopefish. Now if you're unfamiliar with him, he was an enemy, or is an enemy, from one of id Software's first games, Commander Keen in Goodbye Galaxy. Specifically, the Secret of the Oracle chapter, which is considered the 4th episode in the Commander Keen series. Anyway, Dopefish was first in that, and for some reason it's become an inside joke in the gaming industry, and can be found as an Easter egg tucked away in many more games than one may suspect. And Youngblood is no exception to this. I personally would have loved it if the circle at the bottom of the exclamation mark was Dopefish's face. Something like that for this video would have been a great catch. Now inside the catacombs, the base of the Resistance, we can find two Elite Hans 2 machines. As in it's Elite Hans 2 and there's 2 of them. Now this game is otherwise known as Wolfenstein 3D. Now this game is a script-flipped copy of the original Wolfenstein 3D game from real life, but some of the sprites have been changed. As in this game you play as Elite Hans, a Nazi, who has been captured and is breaking out of the grips of the Resistance and the Kreisler Circle. So all the swastikas have been replaced with K symbols to represent the Kreisler Circle, and there are portraits of Terrorbilly on the walls instead of the Führer. The fake Hitlers are now fake BJs, and in the Youngblood version of the game, there are 2 bosses. Now one is a big strapping young lad with part of his head missing. This guy is clearly Max Haas, who is a character you would know if you played Wolfenstein The New Order or Wolfenstein The New Colossus. Also, when he dies he says Max Haas, which is the only phrase that the actual character ever seems to say in game. Now the other one is a woman with short hair in a golden suit. This is Caroline Becker, who is donned in golden armor, which I suspect is supposed to represent her power suit. Again, you would know who this character is if you've played Wolfenstein New Order or Wolfenstein New Colossus. Now when she is killed, she screams, "My legs!" Now she says this because her character was actually crippled and unable to walk until she got a hold of the power suit. So all in all, this is a really cool nod to the franchise as a whole, and it's actually a fun game to play if you get a little bit bored of doing the missions over and over again. But there's actually more to do with Wolfenstein 3D that we'll get back to later on. For now though, there is a code to a Gestapo crate that is 0451. This number is of note, especially considering that Arkane is involved. Now 0451, or more specifically 451, is a continued reference which started with the System Shock game series from the now defunct game company Looking Glass Studios, from which Arkane Studios' Harvey Smith worked. Now this reference is also observed in more games by ex-employees of Looking Glass Studios, like Arkane's Dishonored, and now Wolfenstein Youngblood. Now the number itself, 451, is a reference to Ray Bradbury's book Fahrenheit 451, which is a story about extreme censorship in a dystopian future, the title of which is The Temperature at Which Book Paper Catches Fire and Burns. So, in a reversed interpretation, it's used by game developers to symbolize creativity and creative freedom from censorship. So next time you're playing a game, keep an eye out for 0451. You'll be surprised how much it crops up. Now, all throughout the game we can find many TVs and monitors, but there are a few of them that have this screen of note. What this television is showing is a testing pattern screen, which are used when a TV station is not broadcasting any content, but the testing pattern screen is broadcast so that you know that the station is working properly. Now, while it could very well not be, it also could very well be a reference to one of Machine Games' sister studios, Bethesda Game Studios, and their Fallout franchise, in which these testing pattern screens are used, and while they are used in real life too, Fallout uses them to the point where they are now iconic to the franchise. So this here screen could be a nod to their post-apocalyptic pal, Fallout. Yes, now throughout the game there are a number of collectible videotapes, a number of which are Easter eggs, which we'll unwrap right now. Firstly, America, the New Order, is an in-universe allusion to the 1935 Nazi propaganda film Triumph of the Will, and the name, America the New Order, is also, of course, a cheeky reference to the game Wolfenstein The New Order. Next, Das Ende alles Bösen, I think, which translates to The End of All Evil. While the movie itself isn't, its poster is a parody of the 1961 war movie War is Hell's promotional poster, but in this version the soldier in the background is replaced with Mecha Hitler, the original end boss of Wolfenstein 3D. Next we have Das Luftschiff, which translates to the airship. This is a reference to the 1981 war film Das Boot, or The Boat. It also says director's cut on it, which may be a nod to the director's cut of Das Boot, which came out 9 years later for some reason. Yes, now the next movie on our list, Der Golem, which translates to The Golem, is, well, let's have a read and see if you can figure it out. It came from below. The hideous creature known as the Golem awakes from its slumber in the caves underneath the city of Wolfsburg. It's up to Gestapo officer Wilhelm W.B. Bleier to save the city from the hideous monster before it kills everyone. From the genius mastermind blah 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 blah, but the important bit we've read. So the Golem is actually based on the events of the game Wolfenstein the Old Blood, as at the end of Old Blood a flesh golem is summoned underneath the city of Wolfsburg and is defeated by us the player, William B.J. Blazkowicz. Now in the movie, a golem is summoned underneath the same city, Wolfsburg, and it must be stopped by the hero of the film, which is Wilhelm W.B. Bleier, the Germanified, reimagined version of William B.J. Blazkowicz. Now the flesh golem in Old Blood and the golem on the movie cover both share a green glow too. Now this next movie, Der Übersetzer, which translates to The Translator, ironically. Now while the plot seems unconnected, the cover of this movie has clearly taken influence from the cover of the 1980 horror film Friday the 13th, with the human silhouette holding a bloodied knife, which is the same thing that my neighbor's going to see at their window if they start walking around again while I'm recording this. Next we have Die Frosch, or The Frogs, which is a nod to a trend of 80s horror films in which animals would get mutated and wreak havoc. Now the cover of The Frogs has clearly been modelled off of the cover of the 1980 horror film Alligator, which I haven't seen but I'm pretty keen to. But if you're not into horror, I guess you could say, see you later, alligator. Don't forget your toilet paper, although you probably don't have any during a pandemic. Now this next movie, Die Krab, or The Crab, is about a scientist, Gunther Denzel, a man with a shady past who dreams of creating a portal that allows him to fast travel between distant places. But every time he exits the portal, his body starts to change into a horrible crab. Can he reverse these strange side effects, or is he forever doomed to a life with claws? Now both the plot and the cover of The Crab are an allusion to the 1986 sci-fi horror film The Fly. Again, in name, in concept, and the cover is almost the same, with a crab leg coming out of the contraption instead of a fly leg. Now the next movie, Die Putzer, translates to The Cleaners. Now this is a reference to the 1980 action crime drama film The Exterminator. Even the cover has been modelled off of the original. This next film we saw in Old Blood too. It is Herr Dr. 9, which translates to Dr. No, which is obviously an allusion to the 1962 James Bond film Dr. No, and the main character, Jürgen Böhrer, is Agent 006, and even has the same catchphrase, name's Böhrer, Jürgen Böhrer, and he's also armed with his trademark Luger, and he has a license to kill, a very clear James Bond reference there. Now the film Kader Kumpels, which translates to Squad Buddies, is in concept a reference to the 1990 crime comedy Kindergarten Cop, as it involves two men of uniform going undercover in a school. This next film, simply called Problem, appears to have been somewhat based off of the 1986 horror movie Chopping Mall, and its cover was based on this same movie's poster. The next film, Rotter Regan, which translates to Red Rain, is a complete copy of the 1989 crime action thriller film called Black Rain. The cover of this movie is almost an exact replica of the original. And finally, Cobra Commando 2 Ninja Mortar appears to be roughly based on the 2018 film called Commando Ninja, which pays homage to the classic 1980s action films like Commando, Terminator, Rambo, Predator, and American Ninja. Now the main character on the front is physically based off of Jerk Gustafsson, who is the game director for Wolfenstein Youngblood. As we can see, his face has been used on the protagonist. But now the movie's over, let's flick over back to game content. Now down in the cataconic depths of the Brother 1 Underground, right at the back of an upper level, we can see that there is a giant skull with a pot of flowers next to it. I have no idea if this is in reference to anything particular. Now it may be in reference to the Nephilim, the sons of God, which is in the more esoteric mythos of Nazis and their occult ties. It is believed that the Aryan race was descendant of a divine being or beings, and these Nephilim are supposed to be the sons of God. Now, in real life, again, supposedly, giant human skeletons have been found around the world, and these are again supposed to be the Nephilim. So this skull may be in reference to that, although it's pretty obscure. But apart from that, I don't want to think about it too much, I might lose my head. Inside the base, in the catacombs, there is a tunnelway that is lit by red tube lights, which visually has been jacked up pretty hard by RTX to look like real neons. But in here we'll find a myriad of graffiti on the walls, one of which may look familiar, as it mimics the style of the graffiti found in GTA 5's Grove Street, with the Grove Street for Life tag. Now apparently one of the devs is a big GTA fan, and more specifically a Grove Street fan. At first I didn't care for it, but if you give it some time it really groves on you. Now on the level Brother 3 we can find a whiteboard with a big poster about the Hollow Earth. This is no doubt in reference to the fact that one of the Nazis' stranger obsessions was with obscure theories, one of which was that the Earth was hollow, and that the center of which is actually a sun, and it could be accessed via the North Pole, hence why this diagram has a sun at the core and a hole at the top of the planet. Now some of the stranger theories were that the Atlanteans, the supposed alien ancestors of the Aryan race, dwell inside the hollow planet. But as far as I'm concerned, this theory, it's pretty hollow. Now there is a tape that we can find throughout the game called Resistance Log Little Berlin. This was written by one Jocelyn Garcia. Now this is in reference to Jocelyn Garcia, one of Machine Games devs, and who was one of the level designers for Wolfenstein Youngblood. On a similar note, down in the catacombs we can find a large circular retro-style sign on the wall that says Lubna's French Cuisine. This sign is in reference to Lubna Cecilin, one of the producers from Arkane Studios' Lyon team that helped on Wolfenstein Youngblood. Personally, I've never met them, but I'm sure that they can cook up a mean croissant if they're getting a culinary Easter egg all to their self in-game. Now, as mentioned earlier, there's tons of graffiti in this game, and all throughout the game we can find this one particular piece of graffiti that says MG. This stands for Subscribe to Camelworks. Or it could also stand for Machine Games, the studio that produced Wolfenstein Youngblood. We've seen this MG nod to themselves before, which gives me no doubt that this here MG is just that, a sly little tip of the old fedora to themselves. And once again, down in the catacombs, in the sleeping quarters, we can find two pairs of shoes on the ground. They have rather interestingly been modelled off of popular real-life shoes from the 80s. Now the pair on the actual ground are based on or are almost completely identical to the 1980s Converse high-top All-Stars in navy. As we can see, the Converse symbol has been replaced with some kind of atomic symbol. And the pair on the bed are based on and again almost entirely mimic the 1980s Adidas Superstar Deluxe in white with red stripe. And as we can see, this in-game reimagining has 2 stripes instead of the 3 stripes that we see on Adidas. Also, we can find one of the shoe boxes tucked away in the corner, and if we look on the side we can see that it says All Rocks instead of All Stars. So it's good to see some 80s soul brought across from reality to the game. Like literal souls, like shoe soles. Now in the level called Riverside, we can find a street with a strip of shops, one of which is a place called Magnus Antiques. Now this store's name is in reference to Magnus Orvinen, one of Machine Games devs and one of the senior engine engineers for Wolfenstein Youngblood. A game engine engineer that sells antiques. Maybe this is where BGS got their engine. Ah yes, now throughout the missions we can find these tiny blue toy robots. These are actually a nod to Max Hoss from Wolfenstein The New Order and Wolfenstein The New Colossus, as Max Hoss has a number of toys, one of which was his favourite little blue robot that we see in a number of cutscenes in previous games. Well, these same robots have been hidden around the game of Wolfenstein Youngblood to conjure up a smile in the darkest of areas in memory of Max Hoss. Not that he's dead, he's just not in the game. Now I was able to find about 10 across various missions. Now this toy of Max's seems to be a combination of 2 classic vintage robot toys, as it boasts the head of the 1980s Horikawa Star Strider tin robot in blue, and the body of the 1960s Marx Toys Smoking Spaceman robot in blue, coming together to bring us this iconic mechanized robotic toy we find here in game, which you can take on water as well, as with fresh batteries it can row the bot. Now inside the little Berlin bunker, it's very dark, so we'll have to use some God Key vision in here, as we can find 2 very interesting pieces of graffiti, as there is some wall art that says Michael was here. This is in reference to Michael Tran, one of Machine Games' environment artists. So yes, Michael was very literally here, he built this. And much in a similar fashion, down here we can also find a piece of graffiti that says Dan was here. This is likely in reference to Dan Mialia, who is one of the senior environmental artists for the game. And while there is also a dev with the same position called Daniel Robson, Dan Mialia is just called Dan, which fits the bill perfectly. But to be honest, it could be both of them. Either way, it's a Dan cool Easter egg. Now there are 2 cassette tapes that we can find in the game called Golden Oldies The Old Blood 1 and Golden Oldies The Old Blood 2. Both of these tapes contain a song from 2015's Wolfenstein The Old Blood's soundtrack. But what's interesting is the text attached to them. During my excursion to a small town in the Alps in 1946, I followed a gathering of cultists to an abandoned coal mine where they had organized some sort of ritual. The old blood of sacrifices, perhaps human, stained the ground in the middle of the ritual circle. They started chanting in Latin and swaying, as if they could hear some kind of otherworldly music that I could not hear. It's then signed by Mick Gordon, Australian anthropologist. And the second one, the cultists were chanting something about resurrecting an old god from the depths of the mine. They brought forth a naked man, seemingly drugged, because he made no effort to resist what was happening to him, and slayed him with a ritual knife. In the end, no god appeared, as far as I could see. Maybe the mass hysteria caused the cultists to have visions from some other dimension that I could not see. After that, only a generous amount of very strong spirits could soothe my mind, but the nightmares never went away. Again, signed by Mick Gordon, Australian anthropologist. Now, Mick Gordon is a fellow Australian in real life. He's a video game music composer, probably best known for his award-winning work with Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal soundtracks. He also made the soundtracks for Wolfenstein Old Blood, hence why this tape with his music on it has a little story by an in-game version of himself. Now, the story that is told in the journal entries could very well be in reference to Wolfenstein the Old Blood, as it sure sounds like some of the stuff that was going on in that game. Or it could be in reference to the Doom franchise, as occult rituals and demon summonings is that game's forte. There is also a reference to otherworldly music, which again I do think could be in reference to the award-winning Doom 2016 soundtrack that Mick Gordon composed. Either way, it's an ever so cool little Easter egg tucked away for so many to miss. And I was very lucky to have met and interviewed Mick Gordon last year. He's an actual top dude, and he's always down for a satanic ritual. In the mission Little Berlin, we can find a little shopping arcade, and there is a shop window that bears a number of space-related objects and memorabilia. Now at the center is this strange glass plinth, which we can shoot the window and then shoot the plinth, which will reveal a moon rock within. As far as I can tell, there's no actual reference to anything. It's just a moon rock hidden in plain sight. Guess you could say it was eclipsed. In the catacombs that we now call home, we can find this kind of music zen area, where along with an aesthetic orgy of ray tracing showcasing, there's also a ton of vinyls displayed on the walls. Now, all of the people pictured on the album covers are the dev team from Youngblood. No doubt they brought in a camera, wigs and clothes and said, look as 80s as you can, and then used a selection of the photos to create these ever so 80s looking album covers. It's similar to how all of the devs were displayed in the graveyard in Old Blood, but we've got something in the same vein here as well. Although this is a much cooler nod to your team than a graveyard. And while we're on the note of music, there is a bunch of music that has been reimagined from the real world and warped into the kind of Germanified versions for Wolfenstein's universe. So firstly, the Comet Trails, and particularly their musical style, is a parody of the Beach Boys, and their song, Space Surfing, is a direct parody of Surfin' USA. Now there's a band called Die Kiefer, which literally translates to the Beatles. They have a song called Mond Mond Jar Jar, which has lyrics that are inspired by the song She Loves You. It also borrows the opening riffs from Twist and Shout, while all at the same time its album cover art mirrors that of the famous Abbey Road. There is also a yellow U-boat in the corner of the album, along with them having a song called Das U-Boot, both referencing, of course, the Yellow Submarine from the Beatles. Now, Berlin Boys and Stuttgart Girls are parodies of the song Love Glows, Where My Rosemary Goes, by the band Edison Lighthouse. Interestingly, the intro from the Tregenza remix shares the opening notes of David Bowie's Let's Dance. There is a song called Boom Boom, which is a parody of the song of the same name from John Lee Hooker. The song Mein Kleiner VW is a parody of Eddie Cochran's song Summertime Blues. The song Zug nach Hamburg, which means Train to Hamburg, is a parody of the Monkees song The Last Train to Clarksville. The song Nowhere to Run is a parody of the song of the same name from Martha and the Vandellas. And Karl and Carla is a reference to Paul and Paula, while their album cover is based on the album Nancy Lee by Nancy Sinatra and Lee Hazelwood. And on that cacophonous note of random pieces of music, let's move on to the next tune in our egg-filled journey. Now, throughout the various levels, such as Brother 1, we can find collections of plates on display, stamped with various Nazi hallmarks. This is very likely a reference to the real-life, morally grey and often outlawed trade of Nazi memorabilia, such as plates and dishes and chinaware. They are outlawed in many countries, but underground auctions and black market tradings still bear huge prices for such Nazi relics. So I'm certain that these ones here in game are in reference to this real-life phenomenon, which has been served and plated right here in game. Now, in the Wolfenstein universe, aliens have never been explored, and while we did venture into Area 51 in Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, we didn't get to experience anything extraterrestrial. But here in the catacombs, we can find a black and white picture of what appears to be a Nazi soldier with an alien silhouette at the end of the hall. This could be our confirmation of aliens within the Wolfenstein universe. It could also be a nod to the conspiracy theories about the real-life Nazis using alien technology, and this picture of Hitler shaking hands with what appears to be an extraterrestrial. Now, it's just food for thought, but nonetheless, Super Spesh would be proud. Now, there are a few passcodes throughout the game that are simply 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are referenced as being the idea of one Sebastian. Now, this is no doubt in reference to Sebastian Franzen, one of Machine Games devs and the gameplay engineer for Wolfenstein Youngblood. I don't know if that was something in the office where Sebastian kept using the 123 password for everything, and if he did, I'm sure it was because of Spaceballs. But anyway, just a fun little thing of some of the devs poking fun at one of their seniors. Now, throughout a few of the levels, we can find just trash lying around, but one of them is an empty cat food tin or can with a little cat face on it with the brand name Pixel. Now, I was not able to confirm whose cat it is, but I was able to confirm that this cat on this can is one of the devs' cats whose name is Pixel, who looks ever so cute. It's a shame about the resolution though. Looks like Pixel is living up to its name. On a few of the levels, there's a kind of rare piece of graffiti that I only found twice in the game, and that is simply Pog, which I'd imagine is a reference to the term Pog used on Twitch, named after PogChamp, a phrase you might see as Poggers. Can't be sure, but it's pretty suspicious that Pog is in a game for co-op in an era of live streaming games, so Poggers. While there is a large selection of delicious alcoholic beverages in the Wolfenstein universe, specifically in Wolfenstein Youngblood, there is a bottle of something alcoholic that can be found throughout the game, called Walin ZN with a golden devilish face on it. Now, this name is a reference to the prop artist for Wolfenstein Youngblood, a man named Pontus Walin. And yes, you guessed it, the face on the bottle is his as well. Which, to be fair, if I was a prop artist, my face would be on everything. Now, speaking of this chap, some of the weapons in Wolfenstein Youngblood have the brand name or Woltag. It's very small and hard to see and will require some zooming, but the wholesomeness of this name is much larger than it is in size, as it is actually comprised of 3 different names: Aurora, Wolfred, and Tage, who are the 3 children of Machine Games dev and lead prop artist for Wolfenstein Youngblood, Pontus Walin. He took the first 3 letters of his 3 kids' names, or Wall and Tag, and merged them together to get the weapon manufacturer's name, or Woltag, and then slid them in as a high caliber reference to his family. And I mean, to have a gun company named after you, they must be some killer kids. Throughout the game, we can find a number of retro-looking radios that will have the silver crowned branded logo on them, along with the word Princess on the front if they have the speaker guard. Now, I believe this to be a reference to the Radiation King, which is the brand of television Homer from The Simpsons used to watch as a child. Now, this TV went on to become an Easter egg in the Fallout universe, and Radiation King became the brand of televisions and other electronic products such as radios within Fallout. Now, in Fallout 4, the Radiation King brand gained this pronged crown, which to me looks extremely similar to the one here found on these Princess radios. And of course, the name Princess is obviously an allusion to the King part of Radiation King. So these radios could very well be a double yoker, born in The Simpsons and raised in Fallout. Now, right at the start of the second mission, Riverside, we can find the burning and shattered remains of the airship that we just blew up on the previous level. But if we get as close as we can to the wreckage and look up, we'll see that there is actually a severed arm, which seems to be electrically charged. It's stuck on the metal rebar. Strangely, if we can get close enough, we can actually activate this arm. Upon doing so, it will be launched high into the sky and just fly away with what appears to be rocket propulsion, blasting it off into the distance. It will keep flying until it vanishes from rendered distance. Now, I have not a clue as to why this is here or if it's meant to represent anything. All I know is it's a blast, and while it is quite clear that the Nazis have advanced weaponry, at least we now know that they are quite literally armed. In one of the kitchens in the area known as Brother 1, we can find, tucked away behind a kitchen cabinet, a microwave called the Mini Chef. Now, this Mini Chef is actually one from real life, released by Samsung in the 1990s, and is still one of the smallest commercially sold culinary microwaves ever made. Now, how or why the Mini Chef ended up in Wolfenstein Youngblood, I am entirely uncertain. I guess some of the devs were just cooked. In the catacombs base, there is a framed picture of Shoshona that can be found, with a yellow paint handprint. This is more of a curiosity than anything, but worth note for sure, as Shoshona, the monkey-cat hybrid, was a little cutie in Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and has clearly won the hearts of the resistance in France. Now, on the first mission, the airship, when we go to the dining hall, we can find sushi being served all throughout the buffet, which is most certainly not a traditional German dinner. But it is most certainly a nod to the fact that Japan was allied with the Nazi Germany during World War II via the Axis powers, and I guess they still are in the Wolfenstein universe, hence their fine cuisine being served on this elite German airship. Now, throughout a few of the levels of Wolfenstein Youngblood, we can find a brand of beer being advertised. Glaxenbier Premium Pills, Frau Engel's favorite beer. Now, this smiley chap, the face of the beer, is actually a man named Sylvain Clerc, who is a senior level designer at Arkane Studios Lyon, who, as we know, helped make Wolfenstein Youngblood. Now, his nickname is Glack, hence why his face is on the Glaxenbier, or more, where Glaxenbier got its name, from Glack. And along with this, on the side of phone booths, there will be a poster for the Glack Club. This too is in reference to Sylvain. I bet you Glack you know that now. All throughout the game, we can see being advertised the brand of cigarettes called Wolf cigarettes. Quite simply, there is no doubt that this is just a general nod to the name of the franchise, Wolfenstein. Inside one of the hidden resistance hideouts in the detention area mission, we can find an allied pinball machine called Yes We Can. As in, yes, we can win the war against the Nazis. Now, this is ever so sadly and ironically tipped over, broken and covered in trash, perfectly reflecting what actually happened to the Allied forces in the Wolfenstein universe. Yes, we can, it looks like you can't, and it's a sad and rotten Easter egg. Now there is a readable note that we can find called Bernhardt's note. It says, "Walter, when you get back, I need you to send the document I left on your desk regarding the Castle Wolfenstein incident in 48 to Department 3. A former soldier staying at the Veterans Hospital is claiming he was there in 1948 and that he saw the dead soldiers who came back to life. Someone from Department 3 needs to take care of the witness. The details regarding what happened at Castle Wolfenstein should never come to the public's attention." And then blah blah blah, the rest is irrelevant. Now interestingly, the events mentioned do make reference to events that take place in the 2001 game Return to Castle Wolfenstein, along with potentially events from other Wolfenstein games. However, none of the Wolfenstein games take place in 1948, which is the year that is referenced in the note, so I'm not too sure what's going on there. Nonetheless, it's a cool and easily missed nod to previous titles. And while we're on the Wolfenstein note, there's a tape called Resistance Log Elite Hans. This contains a myriad of interesting nods and references. Back in the 50s, when the Nazis were still a global power, a toy company called Classy Spielzeug, wow, based in the American territories, released a line of toys that included everything from action figures and cartoons to video games. Elite Hans was their most popular character, a veteran soldier that fought against the evil Kreisau Circle and defeated the regime's greatest foe, B.J. Blazkowicz. In the 1961 smash hit video game Wolfenstein 3D, Elite Hans was captured and locked up in the Kreisau Circle's evil lair, Castle Wolfenstein, and had to fight his way out. Arcade cabinets are very rare in Europe, as they were mainly manufactured for the American market, and most of them got destroyed during the Second American Revolution. I think if we put some of our best hackers onto it, we might be able to access the source files in the game and modify them. That way we could create an alternate version where you play as a resistance member fighting against the Nazis instead. We could call the alternate version Castle Wolfenstein to make it sound more German. An interesting side note is that Klaus had planned a sequel to the game titled Return to Castle Wolfenstein, but it was never released due to the revolution. Rumor has it the last copies of that game were buried in a desert somewhere. I'd sacrifice my right leg to get my hands on a copy. Now funnily, the reference of hacking the game's source files to make you a resistance fighter fighting Nazis is exactly what the real-life game Wolfenstein 3D was. Of course, the follow-up game that was never made, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, is a reference to the real game Return to Castle Wolfenstein, which was the first Wolfenstein game I played and I loved it. And the last part about all this stuff being buried in a desert is actually a reference to an event that took place in 1983 in real life called the Atari Video Game Burial, which was a mass burial of unsold video game cartridges, consoles, and computers in a New Mexico landfill site, where most famously 700,000 cartridges were buried, including hundreds of thousands of copies of the Atari 2600 ET game. So that famous event in kind of pop culture history has been recreated in Wolfenstein. And the final Easter egg is the one that you've been seeing the whole time, RTX. Now if you're unfamiliar with it, Nvidia's GeForce RTX graphics cards deliver us the best graphical experience in modern bleeding-edge gaming, with seamless visual fidelity of real-time ray tracing and an inhuman performance of cutting-edge AI and programmable shading. It brings improved deep learning neural networks that boost frame rates while generating beautiful game images that would previously be impossible in real-time rendering. It gives gamers the performance headroom to maximize ray tracing settings and increase output resolutions at the same time. We're living in the future. And while that might just sound like a bunch of tech talk, just use your eyes. As you've seen all through this video, the beautiful and quite actually stunning graphics and lighting that RTX provides. I can only imagine how absolutely mind-blowing something like Cyberpunk 2077 is going to look powered by RTX, let alone all of the future titles to come. And if you're starting to like the sight and sound of RTX, Inno3D has the card for you. Amongst their entire RTX range is their Inno3D RTX 2060 Super Twin X2OC RGB, the graphics card that powered this video. Like literally, it's the card that I'm using right now. They sent it out to me, I put it in and used it to film this entire video. And as you can see, it worked perfectly. Even aesthetically, with its automatic rainbow color cycle, you know, with the card itself being the pot of gold at the end. It's got a cooling performance that can keep even cool in my home, and I live in the land known as Australia. It's pretty hot here. But that's no issue with this GPU's 3 heat pipes, flashy aluminium extrusions, and meaty heatsink to keep the baby cool and collected. It's the Grim Reaper for heat, swinging its dual 9cm scythe blade fans, keeping things cool and quiet. It's also made up of 8-layer PCB for ultimate protection from any accidental knocks or clumsy PC builders, aka me. And for all of you adrenaline junkies out there, it also has an 8-pin power input for stable overclocking. All in all, Inno3D's RTX 2060 Super is the perfect starting point for anyone who wishes to enjoy and experience the new and next wave in modern graphics, RTX, ray tracing, or as I like to call it, RTX, really thick, extreme graphics. So be sure to check out the links down in the description and comment section to fulfill your dreams and trace those rays. So thank you again to Inno3D and Nvidia for sponsoring this video and providing the tech for me to present to you the beauty of RTX in Wolfenstein Youngblood. So I thoroughly hope you enjoyed the Easter eggs in Wolfenstein Youngblood, and that you learned of something new within the game. If you do know of anyone who would like this kind of content, be sure to share it with them. That would bring me great pleasure. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like. And if you have anything to add or know of something that I missed, be sure to leave a comment. Links to my other Easter egg videos that I've already done can be found down in the description via the playlist link. Now down there, you may also find all of my social media links. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, along with joining our brand new Discord server. I'd very much enjoy seeing you there. Now, if you would like to support the channel in a more personal way, you can become a patron on Patreon or join right here on YouTube. As I'm sure you know, all of my time and energy goes into making these videos that I create for you to enjoy. So your support is most genuinely appreciated and welcomed in any and all forms. So thank you for watching, thank you very much for supporting my channel, and I will see you very shortly in the next video. I'll see you there soon.